What's up, buddies? So this is part 1 of a series I'll be doing on all of the Resident Evil games in chronological order. That's the plan anyway, who knows if it'll actually happen. But the first part of this series is the Mansion Saga, aka Resident Evil 0 and 1. Now I'm going to be playing the remasters/remakes of these games, just because they look better, but anyway, I could go into a very long exposition dump of backstory for the series. However, that backstory is going to be revealed throughout the games. Here's what you need to know right now. There's this massive corporation called Umbrella, who has their hands in all kind of industries, most importantly, pharmaceuticals. Now, behind the scenes, Umbrella's goal is basically eugenics, which is the belief that humans should basically be selectively bred based on desirable genetic traits, like how dog breeders will inbreed their dogs and create shit like this. However, they need money to fund their eugenics plans, so they begin working with militaries across the world, developing a variety of biological weapons, which is of course very frowned upon. To counter this, Umbrella disguised their research as working on vaccines for these biological weapons. We'll go more into this later, but for now just know that they have a virus called the T-virus, which turns people into zombies. The intention with it was to create super soldiers by eliminating pain and allowing people to survive severe trauma to their internal organs and brain. But this led to people becoming mindless cannibals, so basically zombies. The T-virus is an offshoot of another virus called Progenitor, but we'll learn more about that much later. The other thing you need to know is that there's this kind of special forces group called STARS, or Special Tactics and Rescue Service. They hire only the best, supposedly, and are technically a subdivision of the Raccoon City Police Department. Now, if that sounds weird to you, just know that in real life, police departments like the NYPD have offices abroad in places like Europe and the Middle East for counter-terrorism, so it's not that far out of the picture. Anyway, the game begins on a train, the Ecliptic Express, a train ran by Umbrella to transport their employees and confidential research across country. This train gets attacked by these giant leech-type things, the leeches being led by this guy. The leeches overwhelm the train and kill everyone aboard, where we then cut to a STARS helicopter in the area. STARS are out here investigating a couple murders that have happened in the area, these murders being done either by giant rabid animals or the aforementioned zombies. We'll come back to that in Resident Evil 1. Now, almost all these STARS agents won't make another appearance in the game, so I'm not going to go into them. The most important of them is Rebecca Chambers, one of 2 main characters in this game. She's a rookie medic and this is her first mission. Now, Rebecca was one of those young Sheldon types who graduated from college at age 18. She has a degree in chemistry, which allows her to mix chemicals throughout the game. They land at a crashed army vehicle, all of the soldiers being dead. They then find a file that shows the army was transporting a prisoner named Billy Cohen. We don't know much about this yet, but he's accused of killing 23 people and has been sentenced to death. STARS decides to search the area to see if they can find Billy and bring him to justice. Strangely, they decide to separate and search the area. I mean, this Billy guy supposedly killed 23 people and the soldiers transporting him, so I would think you'd want to stick together when looking for this guy. Anyway, Rebecca finds the stopped Ecliptic Express and steps aboard. Not too far in, she gets attacked by 3 zombies. She takes it pretty well, all things considered, and moves on. These people, Umbrella employees, either got infected by the T-virus by the leeches, or the T-virus they were transporting aboard leaked somehow and got them. Either way, Rebecca continues on and comes face to face with Billy himself. He's a real ass in the beginning. Rebecca threatens to arrest him, but Billy's pretty unfazed. Before Rebecca can pursue the murderer, one of her fellow STARS agents busts in through a window and warns us about zombies and monsters in the woods. He quickly dies and Rebecca gets mauled by a couple infected dogs before catching up with Bill further into the train. He's once again an asshole, but he offers to team up with us to help us escape the train. Rebecca says fuck that and continues on alone, only to be attacked by a giant mass of leeches. These enemies are called humanoid leeches, and they're super annoying. Rebecca is about to get devoured by the leeches when Billy saves her. She finally agrees to team up with him after this, and they catch another glimpse of the leech leader standing on a hill outside the train. Anyway, half the doors on the train don't have power, and the power box is on top of the train. Great design choice. Rebecca climbs the train to turn it back on, but gets attacked by more leeches and falls down below, getting separated from Bill. Billy has to prove his worth again and save her. Also, I should mention that it could be either Billy or Rebecca trapped here. You get to play as either throughout the game. On his quest to save Rebecca, Billy has to find an ice pick because the lock on the room she's trapped in is jammed. Now, I don't know why he couldn't just give her his knife for this purpose, but whatever. Once Billy gets the ice pick, he's attacked by a giant scorpion infected by the T-virus. This was one of the bioweapons Umbrella was transporting on the train. It's not super tough, but it can absolutely fold Billy with its attacks.
Dude, take my picture!
Anyway, with the ice pick, Rebecca can escape the room and the pair is reunited, where their new mission is to stop the train, which suddenly started moving for an unknown reason. To do that, they have to unlock this briefcase, which for some reason requires 2 rings to unlock it from 2 separate employees. This takes the pair on quite a fucking journey where you have to use this thing called the hook shot, a whole ass grappling hook that was just for train maintenance. But finally, when we find the 2 keys, the briefcase can be unlocked to reveal a card inside. I don't know why they have this elaborate security system for a key card that lets you access the engine room, but whatever. Before entering the engine room, we learn why the train started. 2 Umbrella agents had made their way onto the train and were attempting to recover it. We see these 2 guys, Albert Wesker and William Birkin, 2 Umbrella officials who will be much more important in later games. Wesker reveals that the T-Virus has gotten out of control in the area, in part due to Leechman, and he says that Umbrella needs to destroy the train to hide their involvement. The 2 agents were taking the train to an Umbrella facility where it could be covertly destroyed. However, before they can, they're both killed by leeches. Finally, Billy and Rebecca reach the engine car and we learn that there's a very elaborate way to turn on the brakes, which is definitely not up to code. One person has to take the keycard, which was locked in that dumbass briefcase, to the back of the train and do some math to activate the brakes. The person at the front of the train would then have to also do math to turn on the brakes and stop the train. Once we do that dumb shit, the train comes skidding to a halt so abrupt it derails the train and we crash in this tunnel. Exiting the tunnel, we find ourselves in a secret Umbrella training facility. Now this area is basically just one giant puzzle, but there are some big things we learn here. The first is the cutscene that plays when we enter. Leechman confronts Wesker and Birkin over a camera. He first confirms that he was the one who leaked the T-Virus on the train, as well as the mansion nearby, the setting of Resident Evil 1. We can also see Leechman create a version of someone the 2 Umbrella agents recognize as Dr. Marcus. We can see a giant picture of the very same Dr. Marcus in the main hall of the training facility. He was put in charge of this facility by Umbrella to train the next generation of agents and scientists. Now, Marcus didn't really want to do this, but he went along with it to get more resources for his research on the T-Virus. Now, throughout the series, we find that there are a couple different strains of the T-Virus that were developed that all kind of result in the same thing, but Marcus here developed his strain by injecting the progenitor virus into leeches. Wesker and Birkin both studied at this training facility under Marcus, and they're the only 2 students he trusted. Wesker and Birkin were the 2 top students in their Umbrella class, and an assistant director was ordered to try to pit them against each other to see who rose to the top, although we see now that didn't seem to ruin their relationship too much. Leechman reveals that at some point Umbrella killed Dr. Marcus. We can find a note from Marcus that says people from Umbrella were trying to steal his T-Virus from him, and he got sick of only being able to experiment on animals rather than humans. This training facility is full of some of the most goofy puzzles ever made, including setting the correct time on a clock, moving giant chess pieces around, and putting 2 statues on a scale to balance them to finish the area. Due to how goofy this area is, I'm going to gloss over a lot of what you do here, but you're introduced to 2 new enemies here. Giant cockroaches called plague crawlers, and a giant centipede which serves as the boss of the area, much like the scorpion. While Billy holds a cage in the air, Rebecca has to grab a key that was under the cage, weird, but when she goes for the key, the centipede comes out and snatches her, leading to a boss fight. It's not hard at all, but once we kill it, we can continue with the goofy puzzles until eventually we can do the statue balancing one and unlock the way to the basement. Sorry if I glossed over most of this level, but most of it really doesn't matter to the story. Just remember Dr. Marcus and his leeches for now, as Billy and Rebecca head into the basement. Down here, we immediately encounter some giant spiders before Billy gives Rebecca a boost into this torture chamber type room. For some reason, there's a power box inside the torture room, which Rebecca can use to get the power back on. This shows us a couple cutscenes. First is of Leechman releasing what you'd think is just a few of these T-Virus apes, but no, these things are now swarming the entire facility. Rebecca gets mauled by one of these and falls through the floor where she can barely cling onto a ledge. We then see Wesker and Birkin and they seem to have figured out who the Leechman is, although they don't share that information with the class just yet. They do say that if Leechman's identity goes public, that Umbrella would be ruined. At this thought, Wesker says fuck Umbrella and decides to go to that nearby mansion to run some final combat tests with the T-Virus before presumably going independent with it. Birkin, on the other hand, says he won't give up so easily because his even better G-Virus is nearly complete. Birkin's idea for dealing with Leechman is to set the entire facility to explode, to kill him, and bury the evidence. So the 2 go their separate ways. It's then time for Bill to save Rebecca once again as he rushes past hordes of monkeys, spiders, and zombies to reach Rebecca in time. Now somehow she managed to radio us, which would require her to use a hand that she wouldn't have free, but whatever. When Billy reaches her, he pulls her up and the 2 are reunited once again. They finally warmed up to each other a little bit, so Rebecca decides to ask Billy if he really killed all those people. Billy is pretty hesitant to answer, but eventually he tells us what got him arrested. Billy was a lieutenant in the Marines on a mission somewhere in Africa to intervene in a local civil war. Lore-accurate United States activities, to be sure. They were headed towards what was supposed to be a base, but most of his squad was killed on the way. However, when they arrived, they found only a normal-looking village. Billy's commander didn't want to go home empty-handed, so he ordered his soldiers to massacre the village and just tell higher-ups that it was indeed an enemy base. Again, lore-accurate US military. Billy objected to this and tried to stop his commander, only to get bashed in the head. He still doesn't answer whether he participated or not, but it's pretty clear that he didn't. Anyway, Becca and Billy now have to solve another dumbass puzzle. This time it's collecting 3 of these little tablets to unlock the route to a research lab. Now, most of this isn't very important, but at a certain point, Billy gets stuck in this battle arena and has to fight 2 of these reptile hunters. These things are actually reptile-human hybrids created with T-Virus to be bioweapons. Very strange, but they are pretty tough. The other notable thing is that we encounter many more of those humanoid leech enemies, and they're pretty stupid. But finally, we can get our hands on those 3 tablets which have Umbrella's 3 core tenets on them: obedience, discipline, and unity. When we put the tablets into these slots in an observatory, a path opens to a nearby church. To open the door to the church, one of the 2 needs to stand on this pressure plate, which means we have to fight this next boss all alone. The next boss is a giant bat. It's not super hard, but it can be annoying dealing with all the other bats surrounding it, and Billy should definitely get his rabies vaccine after this is all over. But once the bat is defeated, we can turn on an elevator and get access to an underground laboratory. This place has some pretty good info for us. We get to see how Dr. Marcus's leech experiments went. The T-Virus pretty much immediately caused the leeches to grow, however at first they started killing each other. Eventually though, the leeches started to work together as a collective to get food. This culminated with Marcus starting to feed students from the nearby training facility to his leeches, as well as other Umbrella employees the company wanted to get rid of. This was ultimately why Umbrella killed Marcus, because he ended up killing at least 20 people in his experiments. This paid off though, as eventually the leeches started forming into the humanoid forms we fought throughout the game. We can also see a picture of Dr. Marcus when he was young, and he looks very, very similar to the leech man who's been harassing us throughout the game. Billy guesses that he could be the doctor's grandson. Now there are many of these humanoid leeches throughout the lab, but eventually we can find little leech charms that allow us to gain access to a tram that'll take us away from this place. As we power up the tram though, one of those apes jumps out and attacks Billy, sending him over a ledge, leaving Rebecca to deal with yet another of those humanoid leeches. Once it's dead though, she can hop on the tram and make her way to a factory where we can search for Billy. This factory section is super short. All you have to do is find a key that allows you to take a turntable down below. When you do just that, we get a cutscene where Rebecca encounters her old STARS commander, a man who's just beautifully voice acted.
You're alive.
Are you okay, Rebecca?
Where is everybody?
They should have arrived here before me. Haven't you seen them? That's unfortunate.
He's headed towards a nearby mansion that Umbrella uses for research. He tries to get Rebecca to come with, but she's persistent in that she needs to find Billy. The man finally relents and goes his own way. We then get to fight an enemy which will reoccur many times throughout the series, a tyrant. Now, tyrants are basically the goal of the T-Virus in terms of creating weapons. They're massive, almost indestructible, and can be seen later to use weapons and tactics. This one is a prototype tyrant though, shown most evidently by the fact that his heart is exposed on the outside. He's also pretty deformed in other ways, like his hand and spine, and he lacks the intelligence of other tyrants. I would put him maybe one step above the zombies in terms of intelligence. Now, the reason this one turned out so poorly is believed to be because of too much T-Virus in the initial infection stages. Now, it should be noted that to create a tyrant involves much more than just infecting them with the virus. First of all, it's a certain strain of the virus, one that's much more carefully engineered than the one that creates zombies. Second is that they have to be given a number of surgeries during the process to make sure that the rapid growth of their body doesn't kill them. The prototype tyrant here was considered a failure due to its low intelligence, surprisingly not because of its exposed heart. Tyrants need to be able to follow basic military commands at least, but anyway, Leechman let him out, probably on purpose. Now, despite the exposed heart, he's still tough as shit and can easily fold Rebecca. Once we defeat him, we can get into an elevator and continue the journey to save Billy. As we ride the elevator, we see a cutscene of Leechman saying he's done fucking around, and then we see where Billy ended up. He's passed out on a rock in this river, a river that leads into a wastewater treatment plant, so Billy is both going to have rabies from the giant bat and super cancer from this water. Anyway, he gets knocked off this rock by what looks like a giant fish, but I think it's actually this giant frog that harasses us throughout the level. Well, Rebecca once again has to find out where Bill washed up, but first she turns on the power, and then fights some zombies and a leech, but finally finds Billy washed up in a room labeled Refuse. This room has a shitload of dead bodies in it from Umbrella's experiments, giving Billy a PTSD flashback. The two continue onwards through the treatment plant until eventually finding that our old buddy the Proto-Tyrant is very much still alive. He climbs out of the wastewater to attack again, but with the combined might of Billy and Rebecca, we put him down again. This time for good, as the facility is soon to self-destruct. After defeating the Tyrant, we can get harassed by that giant frog I mentioned before, and it turns out he can literally swallow you whole. This motherfucker one-shot me and made me go back and fight the Tyrant again. Bastard. But anyway, with the power of friendship, Rebecca and Billy find a keycard that lets us access the final boss of the game. We emerge into a room and find ourselves facing down Leech Man. Remember how I said he looks a lot like Dr. Marcus when he was younger? Well, that's because Leech Man is Dr. Marcus. Kind of. So after Umbrella offed Marcus, we get to see Wesker and Birkin gloating about it. They dumped his body in that refuse room and disposed of all of his leeches except one, the Queen Leech. The Queen found her way to Marcus's rotting body and climbed on in, merging the two's DNA into one and creating the being I've been referring to as Leech Man, but he's really called the Queen Leech. Marcus then seems to be forcibly transformed from his humanoid body into the disgusting Queen Leech, and we have to fight her. Putting down the Queen is no easy task, but once it's done, Rebecca and Billy find a lift that will finally take them out of this place. As the lift ascends, we can hear that Birkin has finally activated the self-destruct. I mean, bro took his fucking time. Before we can escape, though, the Queen Leech arrives once again, much bigger and more monstrous this time. We have to shoot up the Queen a little more before Rebecca discovers that the Queen can't handle sunlight, so the plan is for Billy to distract the Queen while Rebecca opens up all the windows. What this really boils down to, though, is Billy getting his ass kicked for about 2 minutes while Rebecca takes her sweet time with those windows. Once the windows are finally open, though, Billy can shoot a hole straight through the Queen and send her falling down into the exploding facility. The pair barely escape without being blown up, and we see them regroup atop a hill. They see a mansion in the distance. We'll soon be visiting there in Resident Evil 1, and Rebecca snatches Billy's dog tags. She's going to report that he died so Billy can finally go live his life. A life so good, in fact, he never reappears in the series. So that was Resident Evil 0. Not a super great game, to be honest, but it was alright. Let's get straight into Resident Evil 1. Now, Resident Evil 1 is a little weird, because there's two characters you can play as, Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield. That's not why it's weird. It's weird because neither of the two campaigns are actually canon. We know that both can't be canon because most of the campaign had you doing the same shit as the other. You know, like the same puzzles, grabbing the same items. Now, of course, if one character grabs a key or unlocks a puzzle, unless there's some kind of janitor running around and resetting them, the other wouldn't be able to then do the same thing. So we know that both can't be true, but why isn't one true over the other? Well, that's because at the end of the game, depending on who you picked, either Barry, who you'll meet in a second, or Rebecca won't survive the game. That's weird because both characters are alive in later games. So rather than trying to piece together some kind of headcanon, you're going to watch mostly Chris gameplay, but anytime his campaign differs from Jill's, I'll let you know what was happening in hers. So Resident Evil 1 begins with a helicopter ride taking another STARS team, this time Alpha Team, to actually investigate the disappearance of Bravo Team, Rebecca's former squad. We know that a good few of them are already dead, but STARS don't know about the whole Leechman saga yet. Real quick, let me give you a quick intro to our two characters. Jill Valentine is a former army soldier with Delta Force training, specifically around bomb disposal and lockpicking. After leaving the army, she was recruited into STARS by Wesker. Chris Redfield is an Air Force veteran who served alongside Barry Burton. After they both left the military, Barry recruited Chris into STARS where he excelled at close quarters combat and marksmanship. Now, Chris is a guy with pretty strong morals, which often put him at odds with both his Air Force commanders and Wesker, the commander of STARS. His combat and detective skills make sure the STARS keep him around, though. Anyway, Alpha Team lands near Bravo's crashed helicopter and 5 STARS agents get out. Jill, Chris, Barry, Joseph Frost, and Albert Wesker. You mean the guy we saw in the previous game working with Umbrella? Now, RE1 obviously came out before 0, so we aren't really supposed to know this, but we do, so... Anyway, the gang immediately gets attacked by dogs, Joseph getting mauled and killed right away. The rest flee the scene, and now we have our first diverging moment in the stories. In Chris's version, only himself, Jill, and Wesker made it into the mansion, while in Jill's, it's her, Wesker, and Barry who made it inside. I have to say here that the Jill version is clearly superior, as Barry is probably my favorite character in this game. I mean, I fucking love this guy. Now, the openings for the two characters are quite different overall, so let's first cover Chris's. So the gang of Chris, Jill, and Wesker hear a gunshot in the distance. Chris offers to go and check it out while Wesker and Jill investigate the main room. Also, Chris somehow lost his gun on the way in. Anyway, he heads into a dining room and then further into a hallway where he finds a Bravo team member, Kenny, dead and currently getting eaten by a zombie. Because of his lack of a gun, Chris has to flee back to the main room, but when he gets there, Jill and Wesker have disappeared. They left him a gun though, so that's nice. In the Jill scenario, the gang of her, Barry, and Wesker hear the gunshot, and Wesker orders Jill to investigate. Probably to have a private convo with Barry, but we'll talk more about that later. Barry says he's going with, so the two head into a dining room where Barry stops to investigate a blood puddle, hoping it's not Chris's.
Blood.
Jill heads into the hallway and sees the zombie. Now she does have a gun, but killing it is pointless here, so Jill heads back to the dining hall where Barry kills the zombie for her. Despite the fact that he has this giant-ass magnum, which is actually the strongest gun in the game, the zombie takes 3 shots to kill. Barry and Jill head back into the main room to find that Wesker has disappeared, and then split up to investigate the mansion properly. Now, if you remember in RE0, when we were in the mansion in that game, we had to solve a bunch of stupid little puzzles. Well, it's the same here, so excuse me if I don't go into detail on most of the puzzles. Our first goal in this mansion is to find 4 death masks to unlock this very ominous-looking coffin, so let's get to it. On the way to the death masks, either character can find a shotgun. In order for Chris to get the shotgun, he has to swap it out for a fake on its pedestal to avoid getting crushed. Now, Jill can do that as well, however, then you'd miss out on Barry saving her from the room. Now, in the original game, Barry said,
"Hurry! This way!"
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
but in this one he just says,
Stand back! Grab my hand!
Barry.
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Really? Thanks. But Barry, didn't you say...
Still a funny line, but they should have kept it the same, to be honest. Now, this is one of many different meetings that Jill has with Barry throughout the level. Another happens in this fishing bait room where Barry's reading a file about someone being infected.
Well, I guess we were right about this mansion being quite unnatural.
You have a way with understatements.
Where's the part that's torn off?
Well, my only guess is that it was the most important part, and somebody didn't want anyone to see it.
They'll also give you acid rounds for a grenade launcher at a certain point.
Hey, hold on a sec. Look what I've found.
What?
A can of fizz. It's sure to yellow and mellow those things.
A grenade launcher which Chris can't even access. It's found on the body of another fallen STARS member. Anyway, as we venture through the mansion, either character can find the STARS member named Richard bleeding out on the floor of a room, apparently having been attacked by a giant snake. He's near death from the snake's venom, so we need to help him. In Chris's version, Rebecca is there with him and tells us where to find the anti-venom to save him. Remember that towards the end of RE0, Rebecca met her commander, Enrico, who said that he was going back to check out the mansion. When her and Billy escaped Leech Man, they saw the mansion in the distance, so Rebecca would have made her way over here in search of Enrico and the rest of Bravo team. In Jill's scenario, Rebecca isn't there and Richard tells you where to find the anti-venom. Now you can actually fail to save him here if you take too long, but we have to save our boy, come on now. Once Chris brings him the anti-venom, Rebecca administers it and Rich hands over his radio before Rebecca and Chris take Richard away to a safe room to heal him up. When Joe gives him the cure, he hands over his radio and passes out for a bit. We'll come back to Richard later, but for now we can find the first death mask behind this armor puzzle where you have to push back certain statues in a certain order. The next can be found guarded by this giant hostile plant. We can kill the plant using the item suspiciously named Chemical Disease on Plants. Now, I would think a better name for that would be Herbicide or maybe Plant Killer, but whatever. Once the plant is dead, we can grab the second mask from behind it. Now, there's actually another pretty funny moment that happens during the mask search. At a certain point, you have to play the piano to unlock a secret room. Now, Jill can just play the tune and unlock the room herself, however Chris is no Renaissance man, so he needs Rebecca's help to play the tune. The only thing about that is that Rebecca can't play the piano either. In RE0, Billy had to play the piano to unlock a puzzle, and here she fucks it up for about 3 minutes before finally getting the tune right.
What was that?
My interpretation is off a little.
Good stuff. Anyway, the next of the masks can be found in this dusky attic, past where Richard was attacked. As you might expect, there's a giant fucking snake in here named Yawn. I actually really like this design because, this is a weird thing to say, but I like how they went for more girth than length with the snake. I like my snakes thick and juicy, you know? And you can't actually kill Yawn here, only scare it off, so really what you want to do is run and grab the death mask at the back of the room and get the fuck out. It's that simple for Chris anyway. For Jill, Richard recovers from his wounds and busts in to help us fight the snake. He actually downs the snake for a second, but it turns out to be faking as it lunges at Jill from behind. Richard jumps in the way like the hero that he is and gets eaten. The plus side is that he drops his very powerful assault shotgun super early in the game. Anyway, if the snake poisons Chris, Rebecca will just give him the antidote while Jill has to run all the way back and get the serum herself. Remember that Richard is still alive in the Chris scenario because he will come back into it later. 3 death masks down, 1 to go. The last is pretty easy to find. It's in this little puzzle where you have to turn on certain lights to make these murals certain colors. If you get the puzzle wrong, a murder of crows tries to jump you, but with all 4 death masks in hand, we can head back to that ominous coffin. Each time you place a mask, you get this really sick animation that makes it seem like you're about to unleash some kind of ancient evil onto the earth. But it just turns out to be a type of zombie called a Crimson Head. Far faster, tougher, and more aggressive than usual zombies. These are the result of a certain strain of the T-virus, the Epsilon strain. This one was the first zombie to become a Crimson, which is why it's called a prototype. However, anytime you kill a zombie throughout the game without burning its body or destroying its head, they come back as Crimson Heads. Now, the reason these weren't in RE0 is because the strain that the Leech Queen and her leeches were infected with was created long before the Epsilon strain. Cool stuff, but once we kill the Crimson Head, we can find a little umbrella logo called the Stone and Metal Object. Yeah, we did all that work for a little trinket. Now, that trinket can be used to unlock a door, allowing us access to the forest and residence outside the mansion, where we're headed now. The first stop along the way is this nice little cabin where we need to pick up a little square crank. It's called the Trevor's Cabin. Now just remember that name for now. On the way, Chris hears Wesker over the radio talking about some kind of chained-up monster in the woods that's invulnerable to bullets. Jill hears the same, but from Barry. Once we grab the crank in the shack, though, we hear the front door open and somebody walking around inside. When we go to investigate, this fucking thing knocks us out. It's this hunchbacked, chained-up monster wearing some kind of skin mask on its face. The one we were warned about. Now, this monster in particular, I think, could benefit from another remake of this game in the new third-person style, because this thing is creepy as fuck. Anyway, we wake up still in the cabin with the monster and we have to dash past it. Like I said, I think this would be much creepier in the modern style, but once we escape, it's time to use that little square crank on the other side of a forest. Using it to lower the water level in the pool, we're able to pass through this snake-infested garden and make our way to the residence next to the mansion. On the way, we can hear Brad, the Star's helicopter pilot, radio to say that he's waiting for some kind of signal to come pick us up, but unfortunately our radio is broken. Now, this residence is a place where employees stayed, specifically those who worked on 2 projects, both of which we're about to meet. Now, when Jill arrives at the residence, she can overhear Barry talking to someone in a room.
But it's not necessary to destroy stars. What about my family? If I play my cards right.
He mentions things like destroying stars and saving his family. Very sus behavior. When Jill enters the room, Barry simply says he was talking to himself and heads outside to get some fresh air. Anyway, the first destination in the residence is this mysterious underground lab called the Aqua Ring. An accurate name, as it is indeed a ring filled with water. Inside of that water are giant T-virus infected sharks who try to take a bite of you at every chance. In Jill's scenario, nothing special happens here. However, in Chris's, we find Richard down here. Now, I have no fucking idea how he got down here, as we had to uncover a secret entrance to come down here. But he's here, and just as Chris is about to get eaten by one of those sharks, Richard pushes him out of the way and gets eaten himself. I guess it's really just this guy's destiny to get eaten by a giant animal of some sort. We need to drain the water in this ring, and to do that we have to do this kind of stressful sequence where you first need to lower the pressure shelter on the control room, which gets jammed. Once you fix it, you can lower the shelter and drain the water, but on my first playthrough I was seconds away from dying here. Once the water is drained, you can find all the sharks flopping around as they slowly suffocate, and you can pick up Richard's shotgun. We can also see the biggest of the infected sharks, Neptune, also just flopping around in the puddle. We have to kill him using electricity in order to grab a key and continue. The Aqua Ring is one of the 2 projects I mentioned earlier. The other is Plant 42, which tries to grab you through cracks in the ground. Clearly we have to get rid of this motherfucker, but the way you do that varies greatly between characters. Now, Jill is the goat, so she can actually find a formula for a chemical called V-Jolt, which is supposed to kill the plant in under 5 seconds. You can make this chemical and then administer it to the roots of Plant 42, where it certainly doesn't kill it in 5 seconds. False advertising. Now, if you didn't save Richard as Chris, Rebecca can actually make the V-Jolt for you, but that's some pussy shit, so Chris just has to fight the plant the old-fashioned way. It's not a super hard fight, but the plant can drag your bitch ass down off a ledge and spit acid on you constantly. Now back to false advertising. If you use the V-Jolt as Jill, the plant is certainly in the process of dying, but it's still strong enough to grab her. It's about to eat her in its dying moments when Barry bursts in with a flamethrower. It grabs him too, but he's able to burn the plant, finishing it off. With the plant dead, we can grab a key that allows us access to previously locked doors back in the mansion. On the way out of the residence, either character has an encounter with Wesker.
Wesker?
Chris asks him what happened to Jill, and he just says that they were separated. Wesker then orders Chris to go back to the mansion and investigate it some more.
Where's Jill? Thought you were with her.
Yeah, I know. We got separated.
I see. Anyway, we better find a way out of here before we turn into zombie food. Got any suggestions, Wesker?
We should get a better grip on the situation. There must be areas still to be explored in that other mansion. Chris, I want you to check them out one more time. I'll continue my investigation here.
Sure thing.
When Jill meets Wesker, he's actually a lot more personable.
Jill, so you're safe.
That's what I was going to say.
I apologize. It was all I could do to protect myself against those strange creatures.
I understand. Anyway, it's good that you're safe.
Did you notice? Barry, he sounded a little flaky.
Now that you mention it, yeah. I'll keep a close eye.
Maybe it's quite natural under these circumstances. It's not really our standard operation. Jill, our first priority is to get out of here.
I agree.
There are still rooms in that mansion we can't get into because they're locked up. I've been looking for ways to...
Okay, if there's anything, I'll go back to the other mansion.
I'm counting on you.
Now, one reason for that is that he doesn't really like Chris, and two is that he's kind of a creep towards female characters. But anyway, he asks Jill if Barry has been seeming a little flaky, and then he floats the idea of going back to the mansion, which Jill volunteers to do. Now, before we head back, let me fill you in on the history of this mansion and who built it. So it's called the Spencer Manor, Oswald Spencer being one of the founding members of Umbrella. He's a British billionaire who, like I said earlier, is a big fan of eugenics. He commissioned an architect named George Trevor, famous for his crazy designs like all the weird-ass puzzles hidden around the manor. The manor was meant to serve as both a vacation spot for Umbrella employees as well as an American home for Spencer, although really it was meant to cover up something else. Once George Trevor finished the manor, he was invited to come with his family and stay there for a while to enjoy his handiwork. When he and his family arrived, George was trapped in an underground chamber to starve to death and his family was captured to be experimented on. A couple notable things happened when we returned to the manor. One is that the reptilian hunters appeared. We fought a few of them in the last game, and at one point Chris has to save Rebecca from one. Another is that we finally get to fight the Girth King himself, Yawn the Snake. It's not a super hard fight since he is just a very large and slow snake, but once we kill him we can collect a medallion to be used later. The other medallion can be found after a super annoying puzzle where you have to push the statue around while these two walls close in on you. But once we have those we can head into the basement of the manor, through the hole that George Trevor himself was trapped in. Now the way Spencer killed him was actually kinda hard as he had them build George's gravestone down there and then trapped him so that he would realize he was fucked. But in the basement we can power up an elevator back in the gardens and find a piece of another of those stone and metal Umbrella logos. To get the other piece we need to head down in this mine beneath the gardens, so let's fucking do it. Down here in the mine we can catch up with Rebecca's old commander, Enrico, and his reaction towards Chris and Jill is very different.
Chris. What happened?
Double crosser.
Enrico, wait. Enrico!
Umbrella.
Enrico!
Is that you, Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Stop! Are you with anybody, Jill?
No, but why?
The stars are finished. Someone is a traitor. Umbrella set us up.
When Jill meets him, he doesn't even really entertain the idea that Jill is a traitor, while he immediately accuses Chris of being one. Now, I think this could be for two reasons. One is that we already see that Enrico has been shot by the traitor, so he probably saw the traitor was male and just assumed it was Chris. Considering the other options are Barry, who has a gun that would probably blow Enrico's arm off, and Wesker, who's the captain of STARS, he might have just assumed it to be Chris. Now, you can probably already guess who the traitor is, but I won't tell you just yet. I think the other option is that the traitor might have planted some kind of doubt in his mind before shooting him, like when Wesker asked Jill if Barry was acting a little weird. Either way, the traitor finishes off Enrico and we have to continue onwards. Down here we also get to fight a giant spider, and for once Chris has it better as he gets a flamethrower to do the job. Anyway, we can eventually power up this elevator with a very strange looking cylinder thing and head deeper into the mines. When Jill does this, Barry catches up and rides down the elevator with us. When we reach the bottom, there's this ominous crying/moaning sound in the distance. Barry orders Jill to check it out while he stays back and secures their exit. I mean, wow, thanks Barry, send us into the scary man while you sit on your ass. Well, that moaning sound turns out to belong to that chained up invulnerable creature we encountered back in the cabin. It's wandering around down here trying to beat our ass. Now for Chris down here, the elevator kinda just breaks, but for Jill, when she returns to the elevator after dodging the creature, she catches Barry taking it back up to the surface. There's no way to call it back down, so we have to find another way out. We can do just that through a somewhat convoluted series of events, and on the way out we find the second piece of that umbrella logo and discover who this creature is. So remember the story I told you about the Trevor family? Yeah, George buried alive and his wife and daughter, Jessica and Lisa, were experimented on by Umbrella and injected with the progenitor virus, the one the T-virus is based off. Well, Jessica didn't respond well to it, so she was disposed of. Lisa, however, did. She mutated and deformed into this monster, and the only way Umbrella could initially keep her under control was with an imposter of her mother. Eventually, though, Lisa saw through the deception and ended up stealing the face of the imposter, now wearing it on her own head. So for a while, Umbrella just kept her chained up and injected her with shit to see what happens. This resulted in the creation of the Golgotha virus, or G virus, which will be much more relevant in the next game. At a certain point, though, she became more trouble than she was worth as she started stealing more female employees' faces, so Umbrella tried to kill her. Evidently, this failed as she was able to recover and escape into the mountains. And she spent a long fucking time, about 28 years, wandering around between mountains, these tunnels, and her family's old cabin outside the manor. Now, Umbrella didn't really want to devote the resources to killing her when she wasn't really hurting anybody, so she's been able to chill since then. Anyway, with the second Umbrella logo put together, we can go grab the first one and unlock the path to this altar beneath the mansion. This plays out very differently for each character. When Chris goes down here, he finds Wesker fighting Lisa. It's a pretty mid-interaction, to be honest.
You're a bit of a mess-up. Chris, take a piece of the action.
Jill's is much more interesting.
Jill, you're alive. I was worried, because I thought you were...
Start talking.
Calm down. I didn't want to do it. Believe me, I can explain.
Don't lie to me!
No time to talk. Jill, hand me my gun! Thanks, Jill.
When Jill arrives at the altar, she finds Barry, and he immediately pulls his gun on her. Jill handily disarms him. It's kind of funny, honestly, but before she can get answers from him, Lisa appears. Now you have the choice here to give Barry his gun back and let him help you during the fight, or keep it for yourself and let Lisa kill him. Of course, we give it back to him, though, as it's canon that he survives these events. Now, Lisa's bulletproof, so neither Barry or Wesker can do much during this fight. What we have to do is push these 4 pillars off the ledge while dodging Lisa to uncover her mother's tomb. Lisa kind of loses it after this and grabs her mom's skull, then jumping into the abyss where she would actually survive, to later be killed by Wesker in a Wii game. Once Lisa's gone, either Wesker or Barry will agree to stay behind, and Jill for some reason doesn't bring up what just happened between the two of them. Anyway, using those little medallions we got a little while ago, we can descend into the Arclay Laboratory, the real reason this mansion was built. While to the public the Spencer Mansion was a vacation home, it was just an excuse to be shipping a bunch of top Umbrella employees out here to work in these underground labs. These are the labs where they turned the T-virus from the simple progenitor into what it is today. Now down in these labs there are a couple very important things to do. One of which is to collect 3 of these MO discs that contain pieces of a password to unlock a massive vault door. What's held within that vault? Well, we'll see in a bit. The other is to power on this elevator to go deeper into the labs. The way you do that is by carrying this super sensitive fuel over a short distance. If you run, shoot a gun, or get attacked by a zombie, it'll detonate and kill you. A new enemy type is introduced down here. These human-fly hybrids called Chimera who harass you throughout the level. I don't mind them though because shooting them with the shotgun is probably the most satisfying thing in this game. Now I don't know where they got this information from, but the wiki says these were created by Umbrella forcibly impregnating homeless women with the crossbreed embryos. I mean, what the hell, man. But once we get the elevator powered up, it's time to find out who that traitor was. Let's first talk about how it goes for Chris. Before heading down the elevator, he's joined by Rebecca, and as it turns out, the traitor is Wesker.
So you've come.
I mean, who could have guessed? It's not like we have foreknowledge from the prequel that spoiled it, but Wesker congratulates Chris for figuring it all out, and denies that Umbrella paid him off to destroy stars. He says he's been with Umbrella from the start. I'll explain in a minute. He says that he only had to give up stars because the T-virus leaked. Now remember in the last game he said that he was heading to the mansion to run some final combat tests with bioweapons on stars members? Wesker likely planned to do this over more time rather than killing everyone at once, but shit happens, you know?
You killed them with your own dirty hands! You son of a bitch!
No.
Oh yes, dear. Just like this.
He shoots Rebecca and reveals his ultimate life form, the Tyrant. It's more or less the same form factor as the Proto-Tyrant from the last game, but this one doesn't seem to have brain damage like the other. Despite that, the Tyrant impales Wesker, then throwing him aside to do the same to Chris, who then has to fight the thing. Now let's jump over to Jill. So when she activates the elevator, Barry joins her, and again she doesn't mention that they literally almost killed each other a little while ago. When they emerge into the room with Wesker, Barry once again points his gun at Jill. I mean, she really should have seen this coming.
Well, what do you know?
I like this interaction between Jill and Wesker much more than the one with Chris, but it turns out that Wesker threatened Barry's wife and kids to get him to do his bidding.
Will be in danger if he doesn't do everything I tell him to.
Wesker, you're pathetic.
Well, you shouldn't worry too much, dear. You'll be free of all this anyway.
Why eliminate stars?
Believe it or not, that's Umbrella's intention.
You're just a slave of Umbrella.
Smart girl, but I think you misunderstand me. The things you mention are nothing. I'll burn all of them along with this entire laboratory. Barry, go up on the ground and wait there.
Barry.
You gotta love Barry.
Wesker denies being Umbrella's lackey. Remember that in RE0 his plan was to abandon Umbrella and take his Tyrant research elsewhere, and then tries to kill Jill, but Barry finally comes to his senses and drops Wesker first. I mean, you really do gotta love Barry. Barry apologizes, I accept, but Wesker unleashes the Tyrant while their backs are turned. The Tyrant swats Wesker and Barry both, and Jill has to fight it. So now that Wesker has been bitched out twice, why don't I tell you a little more about the guy? So Wesker isn't even his birth name. He was taken from his parents at a young age to be raised in a group home with a bunch of other kids named Wesker. This was one of a few homes around the country funded by Oswell, Spencer, and Umbrella, trying to find the most genetically pure kids. Like I said, eugenics. The kids would then be raised to harbor Spencer's beliefs and be given access to the best educations possible. Once they proved themselves to be smart and capable little Weskers, Umbrella would recruit them. As I mentioned before, Wesker would then rise the ranks of Umbrella with his buddy Birkin until he got to where he is today. At a certain point, Umbrella used their influence to get Wesker as the commander of the new STARS force. What this essentially did was make STARS into Umbrella's own little private army and make sure that the police would never look too far into Umbrella's activities. Anyway, once the Tyrant is down, Chris wakes up Rebecca, who's mostly unharmed due to her bulletproof vest, and the two run out of there. Chris wants to escape, but Rebecca wants to set off the self-destruct sequence to kill all the zombies, so the two split up once again.
I'll leave that up to you, Rebecca.
When Joe kills it, she wakes up Barry only to find that Wesker has disappeared. As the two try to escape, Wesker activates the self-destruct sequence and they have to haul ass out of there. Now if you use those 3 MO discs, you can unlock that giant vault door and find the other character in a cell. Chris having been locked up after he got separated from the group, Jill having been taken by Wesker in the beginning when Chris went to investigate the zombies. When you free the other character, you can escape through these massive doors and be reunited with Rebecca/Barry, where you can overhear that Brad is still here. What a guy. There's some convenient signal rockets on the roof that we can use to signal Brad, but as soon as we do, the Tyrant reappears. This time he swats the character you saved, so Jill or Chris, and we have to fight him with the help of Barry/Rebecca. Just like the Proto-Tyrant, this guy can fold our ass easily, this one doing so with his charge attack.
Oh no, bro.
Once we've damaged the Tyrant enough though, Brad drops us this quad-barrel rocket launcher and we can blow that pussy into nasty infected chunks. Then our crew can finally escape, as the facility self-destructs. Jill and Chris have a nice little moment together on the helicopter. Then our crew can finally escape before the facility and the mansion self-destruct. Jill and Chris having a nice little moment on the helicopter together. Like I said, in the Chris ending, Barry is dead, and in the Jill ending, Rebecca is missing/dead, although both characters appear in later games. So which one do I think is more canon? Well, I would say Jill simply because Rebecca isn't actually confirmed to be dead in her campaign, and I also think she has better interactions with Wesker. But of course, as I've said, neither are entirely canon, so whatever. But anyway, that was the stories of both RE0 and 1, the Mansion Saga and the events that kick off the rest of the series. The next 2 games would be 2 and 3, the Raccoon City Saga, so join me for that shit in a little while. Thank you so much for watching. You know what's crazy? I just realized it's called Resident Evil, because it takes place in a house, and the resident of that house is evil. That's crazy.